Good afternoon. My name is Wilson Parker, and on behalf of the Wake Forest Faculty Senate, I welcome you to a State of the Union address by President Hatch. And the format this year is somewhat different, and I think will be very illuminating, as we will have representatives from the various constituent units talk about what is happening at the university this year. Dr. Hatch certainly needs no introduction to this group. As I'm sure we all know, he was born and raised in Columbia, South Carolina, went to Wheaton for his undergraduate degree before receiving a PhD in history from Washington University in St. Louis. His career then took him to Notre Dame, where he was elevated to the position of provost before coming to Wake Forest in 2005. I give you President Hatch.
And good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for a conversation about Wake Forest University. We're going to change the format, as Wilson said. I'll offer some brief remarks, and then as we move through the rest of the time, we will focus on four main topics. I've asked leaders in those areas to join me in a conversation, so each will take 10 to 12 minutes, lest we keep you through dinner time. I feel a little guilty. I feel a little like Tom Sawyer. I've tricked others into painting along with me. As I have mentioned times before, we live in a fractured and polarized world. That was never more obvious than on Saturday when 11 people died during an unthinkable anti-Semitic attack at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. We mourn with the families and friends who lost loved ones, and we continue to grieve as we watch more hatred and violence expelled throughout our cities. As our community grapples to make sense of the senseless, I'm grateful for those who provide support during these distressing times. I think especially of those in the chaplain's office, the counseling center, the many divisions across campus life, and our faculty who mentor and guide students through difficult times. Thank you for your hard work and dedication to this community. In moments like this, when we're jolted by tragedies of all kinds, I find a deeper sense of appreciation for Wake Forest, which is a real community, one where conversation and respectful discourse tends to be the norm and an increasingly valued virtue. I'm also reminded of a poem that I have used before, but it seems so appropriate. It was a poem on the splendor of a university. It was written by the poet laureate of Britain, John Masefield, in 1946. He penned this ode to the beauty of a university against the backdrop of World War II's desolation and of political and social disarray. With Europe in shambles, the full ravages of the Holocaust coming to life, the impending Cold War, as in 1946 that Churchill said the Iron Curtain was dropping across Europe, he wrote, "There are few earthly things more splendid than a university. In these days of broken frontiers and collapsing values, when every future looks somewhat grim and the dams are down and the floods are making misery, when every ancient foothold has become something of a quagmire, wherever a university stands, it stands and shines. Wherever it exists, the free minds of men and women urged on to full and fair inquiry may still bring wisdom into human affairs. Will welcome thinkers in distress or in exile, will uphold ever the dignity of thought and learning, and will exact standard in these things. They give to the young in their impressionable years the bond of a lofty purpose shared. They give young people that close companionship for which youth longs. and that chance of the endless discussion of the themes which are endless, without which youth would seem a waste of time. He says, to be a member of these great societies must be ever a glad distinction. I'm glad that we have the glad distinction of being at a place like Wake Forest. It's not that this place is perfect, it's far from it. But we are a community that works together despite all our differences to have a community of learning on behalf of our students. It's a community of trust where, in fact, we can have civil discourse about our differences. That attitude and approach instills hope and reminds us that we're all human. In the midst of the challenges we face in our world as an institution, we also are witnessing many great successes. So let me just touch on a few highlights, and then we'll turn to our panels. I want to say something about our new engineering program. We are in our second year of offering an engineering degree, and I've been overwhelmed by the outstanding work that has gone into this new effort. Already, Dr. Olga Pierakas, the founding chair of our engineering department, and her team have doubled the number of students. Last year, we had about 40 students in the program. This year, about 80. In less than a year, the faculty has created possibly the most innovative engineering curriculum in the country. As Boston College has sought to start a similar program, they ask where they should look, and they've come to Wake Forest to see what we are doing. That indeed is gratifying. I'm deeply grateful to all those involved in that effort. Salem Hall. This fall, the $21 million renovation of Salem Hall, the longtime home of chemistry here, was completed. In total, 55,000 square feet received a makeover. Labs are bigger. Most of them are 3 times their original size. New portable furniture and equipment is provided for flexible teaching and learning. I'm grateful to all those who made this transformation possible, and particularly for the chemistry department, who last year relocated downtown to make this renovation. If you haven't had a chance to see it, it's really worth it. It's a terrific space. Global Awakenings, the new program in Copenhagen. This past year, our first cohort of students experienced Global Awakening, our first year experience in Copenhagen. We received great feedback from the students and faculty who pioneered this effort. The cultural immersion experience was supported by courses like Danish language and culture, European politics, Islam in the West, and masterworks of Nordic cinema. Our Center for Entrepreneurship. Our strong entrepreneurial program is growing and thriving. Not only is entrepreneurship one of the largest minors in the college, the Center for Entrepreneurship is providing increasingly effective co-curricular efforts on behalf of our students. Dan Cohen, who previously was at Cornell University, is leading the program. More and more, Dan's vision is gaining momentum. For the capstone of their efforts, something called the Startup Lab. In 3 years, the number of applications has gone from 22 to 41 to 60 in the current fall. Thank you, Dan, and to all those who continue to cultivate the imagination and aspiration of our student entrepreneurs. Makerspace at Wake Forest. In the spirit of entrepreneurship and innovation, Makerspace at Wake Forest will officially be launched on November 19th. This new space aims to develop a creative mindset and foster opportunities for experimentation. A hub of creative resources will be housed within the modular units on the edge of the parking lot north of Waite Chapel. This space is open to all students, faculty, and staff to foster creativity and ingenuity. I'm grateful to Professor David John in computer science and Paul Whitener from information systems for their leadership and vision in creating this space. Let me say just a word about our capital campaign, Wake Will Lead. As you know, we're in the goal, we've extended our campaign to raise $1 billion for the Renolda campus. Mark Peterson and his team have already secured more than $890 million towards that goal. Most recently, we've celebrated a $10 million gift to endow scholarship for first-generation students. I'm grateful for the excitement and willingness of so many on this campus and our alumni, parents, and friends who have supported this work. Athletics. I can't forget to mention the wonderful success of our student athletes. Last season, our men's soccer team was the ACC regular season champ, the ACC tournament champion, and an NCAA quarterfinalist. This year, the team is ranked #1 in the country and are the top seed heading into the ACC tournament after a wonderful overtime come-from-behind victory over Louisville last Friday night. So we did have it in for Louisville over the weekend. Our men's tennis team had a historic season, winning its first ever NCAA championship. The men's single final was an all-Wake Forest event where Petros Chryssakos took the title. And in the same week, Jennifer Kopcho, a leading amateur player, won the NCAA championship in women's golf. Let me just mention a word about the curriculum review in the college. The college is undergoing its first substantial curriculum review in about 20 years. This is a complicated and important project that is being superbly guided by Michelle Gillespie and Jay Ford, who chairs the committee. The outcomes of this review will strengthen our academic offerings and the quality of education we provide. There are many more projects, initiatives, and opportunities on our horizon, and while I have offered only a brief recap and look ahead, I want to spend the majority of our time together focusing on 4 larger topics: the First Year Experience Commission, our professional schools, a culture of conversation, and the medical school and medical center. I've invited a leader of these areas to join me about each of these topics. So to begin, I'd like to discuss the first year experience. Panelists, please join me. I'm delighted to have Michelle Gillespie, Dean of the College, Dr. Penny Rue, Vice President for Campus Life and co-chair of the FYE Commission with Michelle, and Dr. Erica Still, Assistant Professor of English and was a faculty member on that commission. We all acknowledge that Wake Forest does a really good job with our students, particularly first-year students. The system was certainly not broken. But what did we learn through the First Year Experience Commission? Talk to us about the top-level recommendations that the Commission made.
Thank you, Nathan. I will start first a little bit about what the Commission is and what we learned. So the Commission comprised a group of faculty and staff who are deeply committed to students. And we began by really trying to understand what was actually going on in the first year through data analysis and focus groups. Everyone has their pet theories, so we wanted to get underneath that. And what we found by digging in is that most students do quite well academically. The average GPA of first-year students at the end of the year was 3.3. A grand total of 9 students were on academic probation at the end of that first year. So academically, they're doing quite well. Their academic adjustment is sound. What we found was more worrisome was other aspects of their adjustment. Students have a harder time navigating to meaningful engagements that give them the sense of belonging that we want them to have. Too many fall into high-risk alcohol scene, And it is hard to take the time to identify their sense of meaning and purpose in such a high-stakes environment. One more takeaway is that for students, there's no real divide between the academic and non-academic experience. They learn deeply in both, and they struggle to integrate what they learn in one with the other. For the Commission, it became a much more collaborative project than we imagined because of that realization. So I want to focus on our retention rates for a minute. Our retention rate is good, but it could be better, particularly when compared to our peers. So when we dug into our retention rate, there were some surprises. We learned there's no difference in retention for early decision students versus regular admit, or for students whether or not they're on financial aid. Retention is higher for male Greeks, African American students in general, and Magnolia Scholars. Retention is lower for female non-Greeks and those not from North Carolina. Students who received a C or below on their first year seminar were more likely not to return to Wake Forest after their first year. So these kinds of revelations helped us think through what we really wanted to attack, and we formed a series of task groups that really worked on these and generated numerous possibilities, some of which can be adopted by a single office. What we will focus on today are the cross-cutting, collaborative, and promising ideas that emerged. Michelle?
Sure. As Penny just observed, working together last year across those imagined borders between academic and campus life was really exciting and eye-opening experience for all of us on that commission. This year, we're now putting each of our recommendations under the campus microscope, as it were. We've established working task forces of colleagues who have the most expertise across the campus to look at each of these areas to think through the next steps. The two recommendations I'm going to talk about first, advising and residential colleges, have grown out of important work already underway in the college. In fact, they're pretty much natural next steps that have come out of highly successful faculty-led initiatives. I want to begin with the advising recommendation. The Commission, after assessing data from the Office of Institutional Research and the Office of Academic Advising, singled out the fact that our first-year students experience great variability in advising, both in terms of the degree to which advisors embrace and understand advising best practices, as well as variability in the continuity and the kind of engagement they experience with their advisors. So we concluded that what we would like to do is diminish the variety in experience to encourage more meaningful engagement between advisors and advisees, to establish more resources and support for advisors, and to better clarify the roles and responsibilities of the advisor. The task force noted that the ability to advise the whole student requires more professional advisor support for consistent and efficient transfer of information, and that would allow us to free up faculty from more technical concerns and let them mentor academic exploration more fully. And that way, our advising system could also benefit from using peer mentors to guide the first-year students into campus engagement. The task force is considering Office of Academic-led group advising sessions, inviting conversations about possible ways to further the integration of teaching and advising based on the very, very successful models that have already linked first-year teaching and advising to date. And then we're also looking at ways of strengthening peer leadership through the existing student advising program. We're equally excited about the recommendation to create a pilot residential college. Residential colleges, for those of you who don't know, are intentional living and learning communities. They enrich the residential, academic, and social experiences of all students by housing students across classes, first year, sophomore, juniors, and seniors. And they are living with a resident faculty and staff member and their families. And they all design integrated programming together. Residential colleges deepen students' connection, and they deepen their intellectual commitment or engagement with faculty. They foster a more academically oriented environment, and they build trust and connectivity across academic years. We've already taken important steps toward residential colleges with our Faculty Fellows program, where teams of faculty work within a first-year residence to provide mentoring and programming. And also, we've done this with our well-received living and learning communities. So we've done some important groundwork here. Research shows that residential colleges are offer a powerful alternative affiliation for students who have yet to find their place in our community. They create new spaces for students to engage with each other, and they promote an appreciation for diversity. They expand the tradition of teaching excellence and education by moving teaching to spaces outside the classroom and into different modalities. In other words, residential colleges invite deep learning with each other and with engaged faculty, and it is not mediated by grades. Another proven benefit of residential colleges is reducing risky behavior. Binge drinking, drug use, violent actions have dropped significantly with the introduction of residential schools or colleges in schools as diverse as Virginia Tech and Dartmouth. Now, at this point, the Task Force on Residential Colleges, it's being co-chaired by Steve Giles, chair of the Department of Communication, and by Donna McGalliard, head of Residence Life and Housing, is assessing which of the first-year residences most lend themselves to a residential college. And they're considering the support systems and leadership a residential college needs to be successful, all with an eye toward launching for fall 2020. So now my colleague Penny Rue is going to share information about two more of our recommendations.
Yeah, I'll describe the next two. Authentic messaging came from the realization that most students hear some version of, these are going to be the best 4 years of your life. And in retrospect, they probably will be, but it doesn't feel like that when you're going through them. And so one of the things our students experience, if it's not perfect, they think it's them. They think they don't fit or they've failed in some way. And what we want to do is use our very talented communications team to normalize the ups and downs of college life and help people understand that they have exactly what it takes to thrive here. We don't want them to get the wrong message that they don't belong. The ePortfolio project has been called the 11th high impact practice by AAC and U. They're an electronic way to provide a structured approach for students to identify and reflect upon their other learning experiences, and to do so in a digital environment in which students are so comfortable. So it's about reflecting and making meaning from learning, whether it happens in or out of the classroom, in an integrative way to help students with their sense of direction, their sense of meaning and purpose. And now I'm going to ask Erica to wrap up with some of our other initiatives.
Thanks, Penny. So I just want to briefly introduce our final two initiatives. One is a new course, FYE 101, and then the other initiative is to assess the first-year experience overall. So about FYE 101, in response to the increased demand for supporting students as they transition beyond orientation, and also in response to increased demand for fostering a community of diversity and inclusion, the Office of Academic Advising partnered with Campus Life and the Office of Wellbeing to conceptualize, develop, and then pilot a course specifically for first-year students, which is FYE 101. Just under 300 students experienced that course over the 2-year pilot, and according to data analysis that looked at a comparable set of first-year students, FYE 101 helped students achieve the course outcomes at much higher levels based on their self-perception and their self-confidence. So given that success, and because we know that those course outcomes would benefit all students, FYE 101 is being presented to CAT with the recommendation that it be adopted as a regular course offering. The recommendation is coming with the support of the FYE Commission, but also the College Curriculum Review Committee is supporting that recommendation, which just suggests that there's increased awareness of the potential and the significance of that course. A 1 credit hour seminar style pass-fail course, FYE 101 supports students transitioning into college through the development of deep learning, of resilience, and of cultural competence. The course is organized around 3 key outcomes: academic success, living in community, and well-being. And it incorporates well-established principles to address topics as varied as self-awareness, deliberative dialogue, motivation, curiosity, resilience. We also have students thinking about their own communication styles, as well as mindfulness. Students are academically engaged as they encounter the research basis of the relevant principles, but then they also directly apply those principles to their own experience as first-year students. And in that way, the course allows for the integration of knowledge, practice, and reflection that is so important for success and for meaningful learning. We know that this generation of students brings different perspectives, different expectations, and different needs, and all of that shapes the way that we interact with them, and especially in our classrooms. So serving these students and preserving the teacher-scholar model means supporting them during that transition into Wake's academic community. Addressing these needs in FYE 101 gives us an opportunity to provide that crucial support, but also to lay the foundation for the rigor and the richness of the classes that students are then going to go on to take with us. And then, of course, implementing these initiatives that we've all talked about is really just the first step. So Michelle already talked about this year being devoted to paying attention to what we're doing and thinking carefully and planning carefully for the initiatives as we move forward. And that kind of attention is going to be continued through the final recommendation, which is the ongoing assessment of the initiatives being brought forward. So each initiative that gets put into place will have an assigned assessment committee, and their primary task will be to evaluate the implementation and then the impacts of each of the recommendations. Working closely with the Office of Institutional Research, small groups of faculty and staff who have expertise in the relevant areas will monitor the ongoing success of the programs and make recommendations as appropriate. So just a final comment. We know that Wake Forest is a rich environment of academic excellence, and it's an environment that we value, that we work hard to create, and that we're eager to have students join. And so because of that, and because we're committed to that, everything that we're offering is really designed to help support students as they come into that environment. And we think that gives us a real opportunity for some promising ways to support students. We're excited about that.
Great. Penny, Michelle, Erica, thank you so much. I'm pleased to have our professional school deans. We at Wake Forest have a long and distinguished history in professional education, and Wake Forest has long called professionals to be not only competent lawyers, doctors, ministers, business people, but that is superb practitioners, but also people that hold to the highest ideals of the professions. So thank you, Jill Crenshaw, Michelle Ream, and Suzanne Reynolds for being here. My question has to do with that kind of balance in a time where there's a tremendous crisis of leadership, and I would say even in the professions. How is Wake Forest trying to address these challenges through professional education?
Thank you, Dr. Hatch. It's great to be here and have a chance to speak about this topic, and I have a question for all of you as I reflect on this from the perspective of the School of Divinity. The question is this: what is the sound of your genuine? What is the sound of your genuine? Howard Thurman, a theologian, mystic, activist, religious leader, offered this wisdom in a 1980 commencement address at Spelman College. He said, "There is something in every one of you that waits, listens for the sound of the genuine in yourself. Don't be deceived and thrown off by all the noises that are a part even of your ambitions, so that you don't hear the sound of the genuine in you. A little bit later in the address, he said this part of his wisdom: "Now there is something in everybody that waits and listens for the sound of the genuine in other people. I must wait and listen for the sound of the genuine in you. I must wait." I believe that effective religious leaders, effective leaders in many professions, have spent time and are spending time tuning in to the sound of their genuine, their authentic selves. Not an easy task in a world like ours, where there is so much to be curated from the news, online and social media and other places. But if people can do that, then when they become centered in that place of authenticity, they have a healthier capacity to listen for the sound of the genuine, for good ideas, for troubling difficulties, for aspirational dreams. They have a capacity to listen for that in other people who they encounter in their communities of service. Our program at the School of Divinity invites students to explore and discern the sound of the genuine in their own lives, to explore the sound of the genuine in the context from which they come and the communities where they go to serve, and to explore what might for them be the sound of the genuine in sacred texts and academic disciplines of theological education. Our hope as students enter into this curriculum that is itself nimble but rooted in a Christian heritage and tradition, our hope is that our students, religious leaders, will be at the forefront of healthy and transformative responses in hurting communities. And in those public moments like we experienced this past week, when a prophetic voice of wisdom and prophetic voices and presences of care are needed. But religious leaders don't undertake this work of leadership alone. The sound of the genuine dwells in others too. And I think religious leaders have an opportunity to join with business and civic leaders in shaping the communities where they live and work. That's why I'm excited to be in community with these colleagues and others in the law school, in the business school, in the college, in the medical school. To do this work effectively, though, leaders need a clear sense of their professional identities. They need a sense of the resonance between their skills, gifts, and passions and that of the communities they serve. And they need collaborative relationships with business and civic leaders who share a common sense of calling from our world to build healthy and thriving communities. I think this is where professional education at a collegiate university with a focus on engaged humanities has an opportunity to do something that is unique, profound, and powerful. We have the opportunity together to equip leaders who bring authenticity to their work when confidence in leadership and its authenticity has been replaced by skepticism or even by distrust. And we have an opportunity as a community of professional educators to help students learn to collaborate with others, to listen to themselves, and then in that centered place, to learn to listen to the world around them and bring a sense of caring and hope in places where that is greatly and desperately needed. We're doing that at the Divinity School, I think, in a number of ways. For the sixth time now, for the 6th year in a row, we've been named a seminary that changes the world by the Center for Faith and Service. We just received a nearly $1 million grant from the Lilly Foundation to work on a project called Thriving in Ministry, and we continue to welcome students who are eager to hear the sound of the genuine in themselves and to learn to listen for the sound of the genuine in others. And when discourse is so broken, I believe that's what we need. And so we work to do that at our place and send students out to do that work in their communities.
Does anybody not feel sorry for me following that? In the business school, we think a lot about this in kind of similar ways. Not nearly as powerfully expressed. We think about increasing confidence in leadership, and we believe firmly that the way to do that is to conduct business ethically. And so that idea is very much at the center of our mission statement, which reads in part that really our reason for being is to produce passionate, ethical business leaders who produce results with integrity. And that really is our heartbeat. The trick, though, is in how do you bring that to life for students? How do you build that into the student experience? And we really try to do that all through the life cycle of our engagement with the student, from the time they apply, through their active course time with us, and into their years as an alumnus. Let me give a couple of examples. As students, undergraduate students, apply to the business school, there's kind of an infamous question that's on the application form that puts them inside an ethical dilemma and basically says, okay, here's a scenario, what would you do in this scenario? And one of the main reasons we have that on our application is we think that's a key moment. That's a great time for some reflection. As you're starting to think about beginning your study of business, let's pause and ask ourselves, what are the formal or informal ethical principles that tend to govern the way I make sticky decisions? And it's a great opportunity to think about that, and we hope that opens up some channels of sort of conversation in the mind that then we can build on as we go through the course sequence. Students in all of our programs have the opportunity to take a course in leadership, ethics, professional responsibility. It kind of shows up in different ways in different programs. There are lots of opportunities in classes that are not necessarily dedicated specifically to business ethics, lots of opportunities to engage and intersect with conversations around business ethics. I need to give credit for those opportunities. A lot of them are created by our Center for Leadership and Character. Just for fun the other day, because in the business school we like to count things. So we counted the number of classroom exercises and case studies and inventories of strengths that the CLC has produced over the years to bring into our classrooms, and we're above 250. So that's a lot of conversation that's been stimulated. We also have a number of extracurricular activities that we offer students. We have a winning ethics debate team that we have sponsored and coached for a number of years. So I could go on and on and on, but I hope you're getting the idea that business ethics is very front and center for us. We think it's the right thing to do, but we also think that it will have ultimately the impact of increasing confidence in leaders as they graduate.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Dr. Hatch. And let me start by saying I think that it's a powerful moment in legal education. There may be a crisis of confidence in leadership, but there is an increased awareness of the need for the rule of law and an increased awareness of the need to protect it. This awareness is driving people to law school. A huge increase in the number of applicants, particularly applicants with the strongest LSAT scores. At Wake Forest this past year, we had a 25% increase in applications. Most of those, or the biggest growth, at the top of the LSAT scores. You know, national surveys are trying to analyze. They've asked these applicants, why are you going to law school? And they identified what they call the Trump bump. That people are going to law schools with these great standardized test scores. They feel the need to serve in unsettled times. So what we are doing at Wake Forest Law School is trying to channel this energy. We continue to do what we've always done, and that is train people who will graduate with excellent skills of deductive reasoning, who take fact-based analysis and great legal principles to reach nuanced conclusions. So to channel this energy that's come into law schools, and particularly Wake Forest Law Schools, we are addressing hot-button topics. And when we have our faculty who are leading these discussions on hot-button topics, we ask them, make sure it's not partisan. Let's apply the facts. Let's apply the legal principles and analyze these issues. So immediately after Trump was elected, we started having a series of forums, which our faculty led. It was, what does a Trump administration mean for administrative law? What does it mean for immigration law? What might a Trump administration mean for criminal procedure? Just this week, we have concluded 3 sessions on the Kavanaugh hearings. The first one, we kicked off, what are the legal issues surrounding the Kavanaugh confirmation process? And we pulled it off in a nonpartisan way. You should have heard the quality of the discussion of the legal issues surrounding the Kavanaugh hearings. And I would say that the quality of the discussion put the Senate Judiciary Committee to shame, but the committee already took care of that. We are also really proud of channeling this energy coming to law school by requiring, it was sneaky of us, we require 1 hour, only 1 hour of pro bono work in the 1L year. And what we knew would happen has happened. They get a taste of it and love it. And so increasing numbers of pro bono hours, it seems like every year our graduates graduate with 3 times the number of pro bono hours of the class before it. So I would not have a microphone these days without ending with another way we're channeling our students' energy, and that's into excellent advocacy. I'll have to say, Wake Forest Law School just pulled off a quadfecta. There are 2 kinds of advocacy competitions that have national competitions: moot court competition, a trial team competition. And there are 4 national championships associated with the moot court competition and these trial competitions. So let me just say that in 2017, Wake Forest Law School won the National Moot Court competition, which we hadn't done for 25 years. Oh, and there's more. Also in 2017, we won the National AAJ, that's the American Advocates for Justice, the AAJ trial team competition, which we had never done. Hold your applause, because this could take a while. In 2018, in the spring of 2018, we won the National Trial Team competition, which we had never done. And then the 4th national competition, it's called the Tournament of Champions. 16 law schools who, over the last 3 years, have acquired the best, scored the best in trial team competitions, are invited to compete in the Tournament of Champions. That was this past weekend. And as they say, we swept the ballots. That means there's a panel of 5 judges who judged the semifinal rounds. All of them declared that Wake Forest was the winner. And then the same thing happened in the finals. We swept the ballots. For the first time in history, we won the Tournament of Champions. Wow. Now you can applaud. I believe that no law school has ever won all 4 of those. Certainly no law school has ever won all 4 in an 18-month period. So in conclusion, our students and our coaches, who are all graduates of our law school, are awesome.
Yeah. Jill, Michelle, and Suzanne, thank you for all of your superb work. Would our panelists for the culture of conversation please join me? Wake Forest is indeed a place of conversation, and in the times in which we live, we're trying to reinforce that. I think all of you know about the call to conversation, which began externally among parents and friends and alumni, and this year we're bringing to campus. So joining me is Brett Eaton, the Senior Associate Vice President for Communication and External Relations, Dr. Andrea Ellis, Associate Vice President for Innovation, and Walter Jackson, a junior politics and international affairs major from Laurinburg, North Carolina. So, what has been happening on campus with the Call to Conversation?
Yeah, this is an exciting topic, and I love talking about it. Over the last year, 1,500 alumni and parents and a growing number of students, faculty, and staff have been our mostly eager test subjects as we've worked to figure out how to structure these conversations to build connection, how to prepare our moderators to deal with the inevitable tense moments, and how to even articulate what our goals for this program are. Recently, I had an experience of moderating a conversation with a group of alumni, and I think the story from that experience helps to articulate what it is this program's all about and what our students and faculty and staff are going to experience. The conversation that night with the group of alumni, the topic was community. And our opening discussion prompt was, tell us about a community that you are a part of or have been a part of, and how did they make you feel valued? And so as we went around and each person answered that question in turn, a few themes started to emerge. A couple people talked about their church communities. They talked about different sports teams they had been a part of. And then a few people talked about what it was like to grow up in a small town or to move into a small town. And eventually we got around to a alumnus who I'll call John to protect his anonymity as we promised to the program. But John is a well-respected professional in his field. He's a father of 3. And John says, I wasn't going to tell this story, but we're on this theme of small towns. And I grew up in South Carolina in a town of 1,500 people. And he says, when you are 11 years old and you steal a car, all 1,500 people know about it. And he got a little chuckle kind of like that, but John wasn't laughing. He actually got kind of choked up, and he had to stop the story. He couldn't go on as he thought about what that moment was like and what that community was like. And so later the conversation became more free-flowing, and the question wrapped around to what's the role of leadership in building community? And John had been pretty quiet up to that point, but he jumped back in and he said, the role of a leader in building community is to invite people who feel like they're not a part of it to be a part of it. And he said leadership is invitational. And those afterwards, a woman approached me in private and said, I've known John for years, but I've never really felt like I understood him until tonight. And you had to really piece together his 2 comments to get a sense of where he was coming from and the experience that has shaped his worldview. But it was all about, for her, it was all about being able to understand him better. And so those are the 2 ideas that I think have been resonating with people as we've rolled out this program. The first is that we are practicing invitational leadership, and every time you invite somebody into conversation, you're doing the same. And the second is that the Call to Conversation program is not really about reaching some type of agreement or solving a problem together, or even really learning how to debate politics respectfully. It's really about seeing each other as human beings again. And it's only when we do that that the other 3 things become possible. Now, as we've done this with this large group of alumni and parents, the one thing that they have all said uniformly again and again is you have to make this experience available to every student, every faculty member, every staff member. And that is where my colleague Andrea Ellis comes in.
Thank you. And I think the answer to your question is that the beauty of it is the simplicity of what Call to Conversation brings to our campus. And I was skeptical when I first heard about Call to Conversation because I heard from Brett and other people saying, oh, it was a really meaningful conversation. I'm like, it's an hour. How much meaning can you gain from a bunch of strangers in a room in an hour? And then I attended one, and I realized the fact that we put a bunch of strangers in the room together at a table, and there's no false pretenses, there's no persona you have to put on, and we talk about something that all of us can relate. The topic is relatable to everybody. And that's really when people bring their true self. And so we brought this to the students, and it's funny because I was thinking of Michelle's students on the ethics and having the business students there. And we have Jill's students talking about their genuine self and being the genuine. And then we have Jonathan Carty, who's a faculty member in the law school, all at the same table. And imagine how rich that conversation can be when all those people bring their true selves to the conversation. It was amazing. It truly was. And the students, when we asked them, like, just describe one word that defines your experience with Call to Conversation. And the words they use are words like genuine, authentic, vulnerability. The amount of vulnerability you can bring to a table with people you don't know and you may not see again, it's a lot more than we could do with people that, even colleagues we work with on campus. That's been pretty amazing. The other part is the diversity of thought. When we first started this movement on campus, we thought we'd start with first-year students. And then we expanded to sophomores in the forgotten class. And they went to juniors, and they went to seniors. And then in one meeting, in which I wish Charles was here to recognize this, Charles Ikovu said, what about the grad students? We should all be involved. And since he's not here, I'll say it was really a brilliant idea, because having all the diversity of thought at the table, diversity of age, diversity of perspective, of degrees, of cultures, of gender, it's amazing to see how the students interact and how they not only talk across difference, but they realize how much commonality they have in the conversations. And the data that we've collected from the surveys, the students, we polled them and asked them, what do you think about the Call to Conversation? And over 95% of them said they loved it. And then the other 4-point-something said, it was great, I want to learn more. There was no one that didn't enjoy it. But if you poll students and 95% of them say they love it, like, you're on to something really good. Another question we asked them was, how many people did you talk to when you went back to residence hall? And the first one was over 5 people. And 60% of the students said they talked to over 5 people, and the remainder talked to over 3. So they are leaving the conversation and continuing the conversation when they go back to the residence halls, they go back to their classes, and that says we're hitting the mark someplace. And I think that, we're speaking about the students, and the beauty of this is it's everybody. It's all of us as faculty, as staff, as students, grad students, alumni, parents. It's all Wake Forest community, and everyone can be a part of that. And as we start to branch off on campus, and you say every student, every faculty member, and every staff member, I start getting hives, because there's a lot of us that want to be engaged in this, and we're doing that, but we want to make sure we're focused on the quality of the experience, not the quantity. It needs to be something that's rich, and we talk about what the outcomes are, and the outcome truly is meaningful conversation, because anything outside of that has a different connotation to the students. And we have this great marketing, CER has done amazing work with the Let's Talk and all the signs we have across campus, but the students want to just know what it really means. And it means that we just want you to talk, and I think that's really valuable. And I'll end with saying that I've led several conversations on campus since I joined the movement, and the first one that I did had a mixture of students, faculty, and staff, some of whom I've known for 20 years on campus. And the question was, tell us about your first week at Wake. And I think many of us have wonderful experience. So many of us love Wake Forest, and we feel like it's a community, a family, and that's what you bring to the table. And at that table, it was just numbing to come off that table at the conversation, because the first person went and they said, Wake Forest, the family, I loved it the first day I walked on campus. It was just so meaningful, and I felt a part of it. And then the next person said, I hated it for a year. I felt miserable. I was isolated. And the next person talked about what a wonderful experience we had. And as we got around the table, someone said, see, it's just a family. And I thought, it is for some of us, but not for all of us. And at that table, having that conversation, that's where we can listen to each other's experiences, but we have to listen. And I think that if we can focus on that simple skill of building stronger relationships by listening, and I know it's very cliche, but that's how we build a stronger community.
Yes, I think in order to have authentic and genuine conversations, it's important to remove those barriers that people often go in with. So what's really helpful with the Call to Conversation is oftentimes the tables are circular, so there's no hierarchy between the faculty and students, so that's very helpful. Also, it doesn't have that network feel. When you're trying to apply for a job, you feel like you're having a network. That's not present, so you feel like you can be your more genuine self. And then also, I would say that, say we're discussing character or leadership, we won't start with an official definition at the beginning. We'll let everybody kind of tell their story, and then we'll build a definition so there's a consensus. That's also very helpful. And the last thing I would say is that usually these groups you don't know anybody else in the group that you're having this conversation with. And I think that's very helpful because oftentimes when we're with people we know, we feel that we have to keep up this persona, even if it's subconsciously. So example, if you're always known for being funny when you're around your friends, you think you have to always be funny. If you're known for being a leader, you think, okay, I have to take charge. But when you're with people you don't know, you can relax and fall out of that self-perception. So I think that's very helpful too. Thank you.
Great. Brett, Andrea, Walter, thank you for all your engagement with us. The final topic that we have today involves our medical school and medical center. And we're delighted to have Dr. Evelyn Anthony, who's Senior Associate Dean of Faculty Affairs in the medical school, and Dr. Greg Burke, Senior Associate Dean for Research. The last 18 months have been a very interesting time in our medical center. Our new CEO, Julie Freischlag, is an engaging and infectious leader. She's a person who really has empowered the organization and I think makes people want to come to work. She is vital and endorses a lot of things, so there's been tremendous energy. So let me ask each of you in turn. Evelyn, what's the scope of the medical school faculty? Let me just say that our medical center has continued to expand. We just bought the High Point Hospital, so that the overall system has almost 20,000 employees now. So I think it's helpful. I'm going to ask Evelyn about medical school faculty. It's a very complex system.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. I think if you're going to understand the scope of the medical school faculty, you certainly have to understand the health system in which our medical school faculty reside. So we are 1,200 faculty members in a health system that employs, as you said, almost 20,000 people across 5 hospitals and dozens of outpatient clinics. And all of them are focused on providing the highest quality of patient care possible. The faculty also drive a top 50 research enterprise, and they anchor the educational mission for multiple programs, including MD, physician assistant, nurse anesthesia, which is through a doctorate of nursing practice degree, and our master's and PhD programs in the graduate school. So the scope of our faculty is a threefold mission of excellent patient care delivery, meaningful and cutting-edge research, and innovative educational programs that will prepare the next generation of healthcare providers and scientists. The challenge is how do we infuse the academic mission across our growing footprint and support the faculty to create intentional improvements in healthcare programs that serve the populations within our area. We believe this is best accomplished by harnessing the energy of the Academic Medical Center, which is our identity, to create a larger learning community that we're calling a learning health system. The operative word here is community, which I really love because I think nobody here would say that community isn't a part of who we are as Wake Forest. In a learning health system, everybody is involved in teaching, learning, quality and safety, and innovation. We believe this team model promotes better health for our people and for our communities because it engages everyone in the critical thinking process. How do we do what we do better? It also, however, begs the question then, who is faculty? What is the real work of being a faculty member? So for the last some months, we've been on a journey of definition, and we've rooted that question in what is the definition of scholarship? And that is contributions to the body of knowledge through discovery, integration, application, and education. We have faculty who are actively involved in disseminating new knowledge beyond our walls and building the regional, national, and international reputation of themselves and the institution. We also have faculty and providers, some as a part of a new cohort as we're growing as an institution, who are focused more inwardly. So they're focused on patient care delivery, quality and safety, clinical trials enrollment, and teaching and mentoring of our learners. The job of faculty is appropriately diverse, and we are working hard to make sure we're recognizing and rewarding the range of contributions across the faculty phenotypes. So if you ask what any one faculty member does, it's really hard to define. There's a lot of missions in which we're engaged, but what I think it comes down to is that we are engaged in a journey of driving the academic mission throughout our entire system so that we're able to engage everybody in the questions of how we do what we do better so that our patients get the best care possible.
Great. Evelyn, thank you. Greg, how would you explain the range and focus of research being done by medical school faculty?
So the easy answer to that is our goal is to have an impact on the health of our patients and our communities. Now, how do we do that? And I'll first say, while I'm going to talk about the School of Medicine, there's lots of collaboration between the School of Medicine across the university and colleagues on the Rinaldi campus. So it's really great. But I will say it's an incredibly exciting time in biomedical research. The advancements in technology that have moved us to a point where we can have really large impacts on health are out there. I have this kind of funny way of looking at biomedical research. I think it's like getting paid to put puzzles together. And as a scientist, you think about what are the things that we need to learn. And when the puzzles fit together, you improve the health of our area and of the world. So I think one of the things that we as a group think about is how do we, as a relatively small institution, have a larger impact on improving the health of our country and if you will, locally. Research is a fairly competitive venture. Of all the proposals that get sent in, maybe about 10% of them get funded. And I think one of the things that we contemplate of how we move forward is we think about what are the things that we can do better than other places. Our size and our scale provide us with opportunities that others don't have. The fact that we have a very large health system that's linked into our educational group, that's linked into our research group, is something that we feel very strongly that we need to leverage. We've also thought clearly about what do we want to do that's going to have an impact, if you will, on society. And so we actually picked 6 areas that we're going to focus on. And those areas happen to coincide with the major diseases, but they also coincide with sort of societal needs that are out there. So those 6 areas are cancer, cardiovascular disease, aging and Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, obesity, and metabolism. We have a focus on appropriately the opioid epidemic by having a focus on pain and addiction, and then we also focus on regenerative medicine. So I've been a researcher for a long time, and one of the things that's frustrating about it is you want those important findings to get into clinical care delivery. You want those important findings to get out there into the community. So some of the things that we've done recently to put ourselves in a position, we've built bridges from our academic side into our clinical side. So we're expanding our activities in quote unquote big data and informatics. We're expanding our activities in implementation science, actually thinking clearly how do you take a finding and put that into practice. We've got a group specifically set up to pilot new ideas and new innovations into the clinical enterprise. And we've created a large precision medicine group to bring some of the quote-unquote omics activities to bear. We're also restructuring our Wake Forest Innovations Group because I think it's absolutely crucial we think about the commercialization and the licensing of great inventions because we want them to reach the bedside and improve quality of life. I think I might also add there's lots of collaborative opportunities between Wake Forest Innovations and colleagues at the campus. So at the end of the day, our focus should always remain on what things that we can do that are going to improve health. And our research base is that way. And we look forward to making you proud of the things that we do to actually accomplish that mission.
Yeah. Greg and Evelyn, thank you so much for all you do. Let me conclude by thanking the panelists for all they do to enrich Wake Forest day in and day out, and also for their participation too. Let me also thank Mary Pugil, Elaine Thule and Shannon Dubuisson for all their help in coordinating this afternoon. I'm also grateful to all of you who came today, not just for being here, but for the important work that you do every day. You have a choice to where you want to spend your career. And it's a privilege to have so many people who are committed to the core mission of Wake Forest and who do that work so well every day to build this into an outstanding community of learning. So let me conclude with these words. In these days of broken frontiers and collapsing values, to return to John Masefield's words, thank you for your part in making Wake Forest a place to stand and shine, giving young people that close companionship for which youth longs, and that chance of the endless discussion of the themes which are endless, without which youth would seem a waste of time. Thank you.
We live in a world, as has been highlighted with the tragedies of the last 2 weeks, about the fragmentation of the internet and the siloing of people into their own little worlds. And it's always incredibly refreshing to me to come to convocations like this and realize what truly exceptional and talented colleagues we all have. And we are fortunate enough to live and work in a community that is small enough to where we can quit looking at our computer screens and call someone up and say, let's have lunch, let's talk, and try to integrate the perspectives of all of the different branches of this university. That we really do have an opportunity to create something special here at Wake Forest. That the idea of a collegiate university, if we can give it life, could truly be transformative, and it would be enriching for us as faculty to reach out to our colleagues in other areas. So I appreciate Dr. Hatch organizing this and giving us a moment to get out of our silos and appreciate the richness of the community that we share. At this time, I would remind you, I know the hour is late, but there is a reception, and take advantage of the opportunity to get to meet some of your colleagues. Thank you very much.